Hi, my name is Antonis and I'm the iconographer in this video. Today you will see me painting the face of Saint Adrianos, especially the part where I paint the highlights, and hopefully you will find this video interesting. I will share with you my thoughts as a professional iconographer on this process. Hopefully you are healthy, you are creative, you are spending time in your studio, and this is what I'm trying to do as well. So here, as you see, I'm already painting these highlights in the form of ψημιθιές. As those of you who are familiar with the Byzantine painting tradition know, we call ψημιθιές the highlights in an icon. And in order to achieve a very nice result on this, we have to have painted a very nice underneath surface where they will be accepted, these highlights, very nicely. They will not seem as if they float or as if they don't belong to the underneath layers of and shapes of light. So let me just briefly say what I've done so far. I have, of course, transferred my drawing on a gesso surface which is prepared with rabbit skin glue, and then I have transferred my drawing of Saint Adrianos on the gesso. I have gilded this icon, and now after that I've started by painting my base color, the Proplasmos as we call it, the γραψίματα after that, the shadowy and parts and the facial features. And after I've done this, which is a process that requires a lot of time and a lot of attention, the shadowy part of a face, I believe it is more important, and you can find on other videos of mine how I do this process and how much attention I pay on this process. Then I'm doing I'm getting into the phase of painting the lights, the shapes of light on the face, as you see on the forehead, the cheeks, the nose, etc. I'm doing some blending and some adding some rosy tones on the face, and after that I'm starting with what I'm doing now, painting the second light, as we call it, a brighter light, as we call it. Here I'm painting this second light in the form of ψημιθιές, a linear way of adding light on the face. And for this I am using some color of the first light. Let me just tell you that for the first light I've used a color that consists from yellow ochre, a little bit of cadmium yellow, and a little bit of iron oxide red, maybe also just a little bit of black. I want my first light to be not extremely bright in comparison to the greenish base color of the Proplasmos. I want my first light to be, of course, more fleshy as a color, but at the same time to not be extremely bright in value. So for this second light, I've used some of this first light. I've added a little bit of titanium white and a little bit of red, so that I want this to be slightly more pinkish than the first light. You see the result is a brighter fleshy color, and with this I've painted these linear spades, let's say, these ψημιθιές that you see. What I'm doing now is I'm using a very thin in-between color, I mean in between the first light and the second light, but very thin in consistency, and with this I'm doing some blending between the first light and the second light. You see how these ψημιθιές are a little bit erased, by adding this in between color. And now I'm doing a brighter, a layer that is brighter, even brighter, with a color that is almost titanium white. You see, if you do a great preparation, we don't need to do a lot of work on painting the face. It has to be to the point. When we paint a face, we have to paint to the point. Sometimes iconographers believe that if we paint and paint and paint and paint on a face, we will have great results. Most of the time when we do this, we get things to become muddy, we get things to become, too much. And great Byzantine painting doesn't require a lot of too much. It just requires brush strokes that are to the point, that are significant, that have a reason to be there. So you see here, just by adding a few lines, I am into this spirit of the Byzantine painting. The face already looks as it has some volume, as it is already something that can be presented and inspire people, hopefully, to pray upon this icon. In the process of painting a face, it's very important to remember that unlike what many schools of iconography today teach, things are not linear in the process, like step 1, step 2, step 3, but we go back and forth. We keep our eyes open and observe the face that we paint and ask ourselves if this looks convincing, if this looks good, if this looks visually rich, artistically rich. And then we can go back and forth on the various steps that we have followed and correct things or change some things without any fear. Remember, this is very, very important, that iconography is painting. It's a painting process. It's not just, I'm using the steps that I have learned, like transferring the drawing, painting the Proplasmos, painting the darker facial features, the grapsimata, light 1, light 2, in between color, etc. It's not just that. You have to feel when you sit before your easel in your studio. You have to feel as a painter. It's very, very important, and we can see this on the great icons of the past, especially of the imperial era, like the icons of Istanbul, of Constantinople, of the past, that the painters there approached their work as painters. They knew how to paint. And this is what I'm doing. I try to do here. I'm trying to approach the painting of this face in a more painterly way and not just blindly following rules and steps that I have learned. You can see this if you find a great icon of the Constantinople period of the 12th century, the 13th century, let's say. If you zoom in, the icon has great analysis, the photograph, and you zoom in, you will definitely see how freely the painter has approached the process and how greatly these icons look. They look so vivid and so nice. So at this point you will see me here painting the highlights on the eyes. Here first I'm doing a layer that is slightly darker, and I'm painting a shape around the iris of the eye that is slightly darker than the Proplasmos. Then I'm doing a second layer that is more grayish and more high in value than the Proplasmos, the second layer, and then I will add one more layer that is more close to titanium white. I can do some blending here if I want. And directly you see by adding this highlight the face becomes more vivid, more alive. Now you can also see how the parts of Proplasmos, this green brownish base color that are visible, they still attain some of their transparency. You can find in other videos my way of painting this Proplasmos. This is part of the process of the painterly process that I was talking about earlier. Not everything needs to be completely flat. Not everything needs to be completely perfect in order to have an icon that will inspire this spirituality from the viewer.
Hi, I'm Antonis, and I'm proud to present you my online course in iconography, Paint an Icon with Me. This course will help you become a better iconographer, and it will help you be more confident when talking and presenting your artwork. It will make you understand in depth the studio practices of a professional iconographer like me, and you will get accustomed to what great iconography looks like. So learn in a simple and organized way everything you need about the materials, mediums, and techniques in order to make a beautiful icon. Paint with me the icon of Christ and learn how to paint better any icon you wish. I will see you at the studio.
Now, let me also explain how we have various styles in the Byzantine tradition, and most of the students today are trained by following the school of Cretan iconography. I'm from Crete and I'm very familiar with the school. My training was based on that. The Cretan school of iconography was the latest example of Byzantine iconography, the latest great example. We have masterpieces from that period, and it's a style that requires extreme precision, extreme control of the brush and the excuse me, the wrist of the iconographer. But it loses some of the spontaneity and painterly values of the older icons. We admire these Cretan icons because of this precision of theirs, much like we admire, some of the Japanese paintings of the past for their precision. They can be presented as if they were painted not by a human but by a robot or something. Their precision of the psimithies, for example, or for the facial features is amazing. But this is another style, and this is something different than the earlier icons of Constantinople, where the masters approached the painting process in a more painterly, let's say, way. They didn't care about visible brush strokes, or they didn't care about about the precision of their brush strokes. Of course, their paintings they don't lack the rhythm that the icons of the Cretan style have. They don't lack anything on the expression of the faces. On the opposite, I would say. But they show us how a great iconographer can approach the painting process. The Cretan style is much more easier to teach, because the range of the freedom of the painter is much less. Let's say there are precise, clear steps of painting an icon, and that's why it's easier for students to follow and to reach some result. Uh, this this makes many people create icons, but what most schools of iconography don't tell their students is that iconography is much more than producing an object, of an icon as an object, but it's more of diving deeper and learning iconography in a more deep way. So anyway, as I'm talking about this, you still see me painting the face of Saint Adrianos. Here I feel great about the highlights on his face, the expression that he has. It really is something that I feel good. I don't worry if my brush strokes on the face are not perfect or the blendings are not fantastic. To me this works, and I will keep it this way. I have some references from the school of Constantinople of the 12th century, and I see some Virgin Marys as I'm painting this, and this definitely has helped me to achieve a similar result. At least I try. And now I am proceeding with painting a little bit the hair of Saint Adrianos. I want to keep things a little not very intense, and not I don't want there to be a lot of contrast between the hair and the Proplasmos, just an insinuation of a transition between the flesh part to the hairy part. Here you can see the final result after I've painted the forms of light on the face. You can see more iconography videos on my Patreon page, or you can visit my page on Teachable, where you can find my full course on iconography, how to paint an icon. So here I'm adding some final brush strokes on the face of Saint Adrianos. Let me just tell you one last thing. In generally speaking, when we paint an icon, I have concluded that the painter who paints an icon has to approach this in a controlled way. Like the way of painting is first a controlled way, but also a more painterly, a more free way to paint. It's a combination of these two that produces a great result, as I see the old icons, and this is how I imagine the master iconographers have painted their icons. So really I want to thank you so much for your comments, for your presence in this channel. Really your support has been amazing. Hopefully this video inspires you to be more in your studio and to think about all this here. Be healthy, be creative, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye.